Hi, you're about to listen to My Good Bad Brain. It's a podcast about mental health and being a person, hosted by me, Jared Sleeper. If you dig the pod, please review us on iTunes or wherever you're listening. And what else should I say? Oh, yeah, go to the Patreon, patreon.com/mygoodbadbrain. Support there really makes a difference in getting this thing out in the world and existing. So thank you so much for considering that and being here. And cue the theme music. Bye-bye. Welcome to my good bad brain. I'm a normal person, so I'm insane. I've got depression and ADHD, but I'm doing better since I medicated me. I'm still not always sure whether I exist or what being a person even really is, but I figured out a long time ago that being alive is beautiful. Good bad brain day. Glad to be here. I mean, it's Monday while I'm recording this. We'll see time. It'll get up on Monday. I love my good bad brain now. It's become one of the only consistent things I've made in my like. We're over 2 months now, and it's become a really nice place to hang out, and I really appreciate that because it's giving me some like motivation and structure that's actually, I think, practically making me a better version of me, which is fucking great. Thanks for helping me with that. I hope other people are having anything a little bit resonant with that. Just, you know, maybe if it's just a sense of belonging or we'll get through this together. Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I'm just going to speak about me for a little longer. I'm grateful that today's sunny out because fuck, it feels dark sometimes, you know what I mean? I was trying to figure out why I've fucked up. This is why it's a little late today. I was just going to like a fugue state over the weekend. I didn't really do anything. I played some video games, but I don't know. And I was trying to figure out why, like nothing really quote unquote triggered it. Like sometimes it doesn't get triggered. You know what I mean? And this wasn't as like despair as usual. It was a little more numb. Despair as usual. I mean, you know what I'm saying. I'm not trying to like fetishize my own fucking battles with my idiot gloom, whatever. But it was weird. It was weird. I woke up this morning. I was like, I knew this had to get done, and that combined with a little bit of sun and a little bit of like goals I've written down, the plan I've been doing that my friend Lizzie has me on this workout thing that's been helping. It was kind of like, gotta get back on it. Just do the things. Just do the things you do. And I was just trying to figure out what triggered this thing, and I don't even think there's an answer. Sometimes it's just your brain, and sometimes, you know, we live in wild times. You know, I was pretty riled up last week, rightfully so, still am. Not going to let it go away. Got to hang on to that. But like, it's like one bee, unless you're allergic to bees, like one bee won't kill you, but a hive of bees will certainly kill you. And it would be, I guess I feel like sometimes this sadness is appropriate in response to what's going on and, you know, the screed of things that constantly are coming at us in the media and in the world and these not great situations. And, you know, if someone's like, you got stung by a bee, you're not going to die. You got stung by a bee. You got stung by some bees. But you're like, please, it's a whole fucking cloud of bees, okay? It's a serious deal when it's a whole fucking cloud of bees. It stops being a joke. It starts being like, rough. And so, I don't know, be patient with yourself if you're having a tough time, because it's tough. I mean, life is tough. I think that's part of the thing that's tricky about it is like, some of us, I think we'd have a tough time no matter what. If everything was perfect, it'd still be hard to breathe sometimes. And when you actually have a laundry list of actual bad things, it becomes a little harder to just talk yourself out of it. And I think part of the point is just coming up with strategies to trick yourself just as a survival mechanism, and also so you can be useful to yourself and the people around you, so that like this time on your planet isn't, you know, totally useless to you. And whatever that means. I don't mean productive, because I don't think that's a good metric of anything. But I think the kind of like ability to produce love is really adjacent to like generosity and happiness and definitely laughter and creativity. And there's something incumbent on us to protect that and protect the possibility of it, you know, which may be a core thing about what upsets all of us when people do evil shit or cruel shit or callous shit is just like, hey, you're doing the opposite of what we're supposed to do here. You're like, encumbering people in a way that's going to make it harder for them to use this time on this plane for what we could be, which is just to make something brighter in this nonsensical universe. I don't know. I'm a little off the rails already, I know. I'm going to give you a little practical thing. This is one tiny one that I was reminded with, talking actually with somebody who listens to the pod today, and I thought this was a nice little practical thing before we get into this really delightful interview today with Brice. My practical one, I used to do this when I would get like real sad. Like food makes me happy, just it does. I think it makes a lot of people happy. And I realized when I do something with my hands for a long time, when I have something to occupy my hands, that also helps me get out of a nasty place. So sometimes I would just pick a recipe out. I do love cooking. And if you don't love cooking, that's okay. But like, try it maybe. I don't know. I would like make some recipe that takes a long time. Usually like a stew or something, or like something that has steps, or bake something. I think stew was always my favorite because I'd chop up, you make mirepoix or Trinity, whatever, like the base of the vegetables, the root vegetables and aromatics that you got to chop up, and you got to clean vegetables, and you need things that take time and presence and a tactile sort of paying attention with your hands. Maybe you got to make a roux. I don't really do that much anymore because I'm avoiding gluten, but it's fun to like do this butter and gently cook this flour into it, make sure it all like comes together and it doesn't burn and it doesn't get grainy. It was just this like process. You get to be with your hands and a tool. And then like there's so many sensual aspects of it that are nice, like wood, like cutting boards are so nice. They're so beautiful and they feel so good when you've had them for a long time. And the oils of repeated uses over, years and years are kind of soak into the wood. If you have an old cooking knife with a wooden handle, this is why I always try to get wooden handles if I can. Like even the oil from your hands will soak into the grip over time, over years. Much less the stuff that you cook around it, and it gets that's why it gets that nice soft wood feel that you can't like really mimic. It's just so nice, And it takes time, and it slows you down. It gives you something to focus on that's not you, and not pain, and not the things that are impossible for you to fix, that are literally sometimes impossible for you to fix. So maybe that's my little practical one for the week. Cook something, take some time and cook something, even if it's just like making a grilled cheese sandwich and you just do it right. Like you take the time to like, I'm going to tell you, this is my secret for grilled cheese, by the way. It's fun sometimes to like spread the cheese on the butter on the bread. That's fine. That's a standard, right? Spread butter on bread and then put it in the pan. If you really want like a crazy good grilled cheese, you got to put like a thick amount of butter in the pan, like a deep amount, so you're almost like frying a little bit, like goes halfway up the bread, halfway up the like bread slice. Make your cheese sandwich, bring the butter up to like a decent medium temp, not brown butter, not where it's sizzling too much. Get in there though, get into brown butter, and then you gotta like soak the bread in there. You gotta like let it cook in there. Like you let the butter, it's like you're making pasta or something, or making a roux. It's like making a roux. You're letting like the flour pieces of the wheat just soak up that cheese and get to like this really that perfect rich golden brown where it's like now you're getting into brown butter territory. And you can pick whatever cheese you want. I honestly do love just an aged cheddar, or I'll just take it on down to some singles, man. Some American singles. That old good old fashioned, maybe it's not really cheese at all stuff. Yeah, it's hard to beat. And then cut it in triangles because, it's objectively better to cut something. It's better. It tastes better. Sorry, I'm a maniac, dude. Let's get into this pod. This week I talked to Brice, who is wonderful. I met at Clever. We were doing something called Dude View. Well, they don't work at Clever. They work across the hall, I think, at Defy Broad or Smosh, maybe. I think they edit though. It's like it's all in one building. It's all these Defy companies, Clever and Smosh and something else. I don't know, but Screen Junkies for a while. I think everyone's still over there. Anyway, so Reed and I got to be pals, just kind of casually acquaintance-wise, because we sat on this couch together for this like little thing called Dude View, where we gave like dude perspectives on questions about things. And I just thought Reed was great. Reed was like just so thoughtful and interesting. Reed's trans, and I really wanted to talk to somebody on this who had, would have some unique perspectives on life, obviously, but also gender, and that's kind of what we get into. Reed accommodates my dumber questions, or whatever. We go into some psychology thoughts, like therapy thoughts about that. Reed's also, like me, has ADHD, so we talk about that. And I don't know, Reed's like, I talk about it on the pod, but I'll just take a second that I just find Reed really inspiring. There's like a positivity and a humor. I mean, they're a comedian, so like that's obvious. But I don't know, this ability through our whole conversation, just so kind and so like would laugh about some terrible, scary stuff and copes with it with such like grace. And I mean, a lot of us don't encounter a fraction of that challenge in our lives that you're going to hear about. Reed will talk more about it. I'm not going to get into it right now. But that just astonishes me. And some people just being themselves. I think a lot of people just being themselves when you watch them and you pay attention. But Reed especially, like, so inspiring just being who they are. Just seeing somebody be who they are. It makes it okay for you to be who you are, no matter what that means, you know? And I think that's beautiful. And Reed's tough as hell, and I'm just going to shut up and let's get into it. It starts off a little hot because Reed had a tough thing happen just the day we recorded a few weeks ago. And I will also say, last thing, I mentioned we refer to some suicide stuff with celebrities. It was right before Anthony Bourdain. So he's not referenced when I mentioned Kate Spade and stuff. But it's just, it brought, listening back, it was like, damn, it's been a time. It's been a hard, weird several weeks. But people like Reed and all y'all, inspires me. Get through. So hopefully you get something out of this, and here we go. Enjoy. There, we're recording now.
Okay, great.
Welcome. How are you, Reed?
I had a pretty shitty day today.
Really?
Yeah, a guy threatened to hate crime me.
What is it? Oh, okay. Fucking coming out hot. That's what I'm talking about. I love that. Like, we started before we started talking. I was like, I want to like focus these up a little more about mental health and like hot out the gate. Here we go. No, I'm sorry to hear that. What happened?
So if your listeners don't know me, I'm gay and I'm also transgender. And this dude, I wrote a joke, a really stupid joke, just about like how I grew up poor. Mm-hmm. And I happened to make fun of like rich people in it because I was like,
yes, I responded.
Yeah,
to this joke.
The joke was literally like, how do rich people even get into comedy? They haven't really like suffered, so what do they write their jokes about?
You said though it was like if you ever had to Hulk out of hand-me-down shoes or something.
Yeah,
it's funny. It was a funny joke.
Thank you. Like it was like.
It's also silly.
I'm trying to I had a pretty shitty childhood. I can talk about a little bit later. And so I'm trying to, with my help of my therapist, recontextualize things and really come to terms like with what I went through. Yeah. So I'm doing it by writing jokes. So I'll talk about like, oh, the humiliating time my shoes fell apart at school. And they couldn't even call my mom to come get me new ones because nobody knew where she was. And so I just had to be the kid who walked around without shoes for the rest of the day. Yeah. I think they ended up finding a pair of flip-flops for me. So I just wrote a joke. It was such a one-off. And then some dude who happens to be an LA comic flipped out and did like the not all rich people thing and was like, you shouldn't make blanket judgments about rich people. And I was just kind of like, oh, I'm sorry you're feeling oppressed by my joke. I'm sure it has the same weight as how I was malnourished and as a result didn't grow up to my proper height as a kid. I'm sure it's exactly the same. And then it escalated very quickly to the point that he said, if I see you in public, and he basically said he was going to beat the shit out of me. But he made sure to bring up, he brought it up that I was gay and trans in two different threats. And so I was like, oh shit, this dude is straight up over a dumb Facebook joke. He's threatening to hate crime me.
Somebody who's calls himself a comic also.
Yeah. Oh, and it turned out that dude, he had to flee Minnesota because he attempted to rape a woman, another comic, but he has more money than God, so he like basically paid his way out and got an acquittal, and then he also paid to have all of that information scrubbed from the internet. But his name is Adam Richmond.
Normal life. Fuck, man. Fuck.
So I will tell you that from where I am, I'm pretty disassociated right now.
That's fair. Thank you for being here. This is like, I know that's like, I appreciate you like doing this still.
2 years ago, I got diagnosed with PTSD. And I know you want to like talk about like if you suffer from any mental illness, so we can go into that. I do live with PTSD. It's something I've lived with my entire life, but it got really triggered when I was in 9th grade, and I was still presenting as a woman, you know, or like a girl at the time. But I had like the short haircut. I looked very much like your average baby gay. And I lived in a town that was very conservative. And
what part of the country you're from?
I'm from Riverside County. It's a farming community called Norco, California, and they straight up like still do rodeos and they have horse trails.
People forget that about California. Well, a lot of states where they have really big metropolitan centers that are very liberal. They forget like you get outside of like LA, you get outside of Chicago where I grew up. It's very
honey.
rural.
Like even up in Joshua Tree, which you think would just be hippy dippy stuff, there is a chapter of the Ku Klux Klan.
Fuck, I didn't know that.
Yeah, man, it's wild.
Yeah.
But anyway. I had a real bad time, but it got worse and worse and worse. And then one day, a group of girls, cornered me in a bathroom and beat me up. And I dropped out. I was like, I can't go back to school, but I couldn't tell my family why, because they also would have kicked me out of the house if they knew I was gay, let alone trans, which I had not even admitted to myself at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. That part is being activated right now. That part of like like I can feel it in my nervous system, like the pain of like being hit and stuff. And so like my hands are sweating.
Yeah.
And I went and bought a donut earlier. I don't remember buying it.
Oh fuck. I get that.
Yeah, I very
take
much
your time, man. I'm sorry. I don't mean to like if anything's like coming
I like
up
talking about it.
Sure,
it's helping, and I hope if anybody else out there, is like, oh shit, I can't talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
You should, at least with somebody if you can. If you can find like a doctor you can trust, or an adult you can trust, or anybody.
If there's anything that I've discovered in life, it's like I think the reason I'm doing this, I think the best thing we can do is just speak to each other and be here. So just know I'm here with you, and I really appreciate you letting me in on this, letting me be part of your journey, because I don't know, we all feel so fucking alone, and and we don't have to be. And hopefully if anybody else is listening who anything with your story resonates with them, will know that in some cosmic way we are also with them, you know?
Yeah, no, or even more directly, if you give them my @ they can DM me if they want. Yeah.
What is you want to say it?
That dang dingus. It's on Twitter and Instagram. So like I'm not like even plugging that of like follow me, because I don't care about that shit. But if you need someone to speak to, if you don't have an adult in your life, especially if you're younger, you can DM me. I'll talk to you about it.
Hell yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah. So it's been a bad day.
Yeah, fuck.
This is us. It's so weird. This is also, I had two, like every once in a while you'll get like microaggressions about the transphobia shit, especially because I'm in the first 6 months of my medical transition, where like your body is changing if that's part of your individual journey.
I mean, even the time I've known you, it's like markedly different.
When we first met, I was pre testosterone.
Really?
That's why my voice was so high.
Yeah, no, it's definitely markedly different. It's interesting.
And you kind of just like learned like, but earlier this week I went to the pharmacy to pick up my medications for the other stuff we'll talk about. And these pharmacists just straight up made fun of me to my face about the fact that I look androgynous. It was really weird. I had called in earlier, and my voice still sounds really high, so I get mistaken for a woman on the phone. And then when the lady went back to like check with the dude, I guess who I talked to, she was like, he's ready to pick up his stuff. And he was like, no, it's a woman who I talked to. And then he turned around and was like, wait, is that a man or a woman? And I just had to be like, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Can you not do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think experiencing overt transphobia in 1 week has been a little bit of, it's been a lot. And so I'm just like looking forward to my call with my psychiatrist tomorrow.
Or yeah. It's interesting. I mean, because I'm sure, I mean, you're a comic, you know, like, and even in my brief knowing of you, like requires a lot of empathy to just be a person and just to be a comic, because you need to be able to like, well, to be a good one. I mean, obviously some people call themselves comic and love to fucking punch down. Yeah,
a lot of people think that if you have empathy that you can't do comedy well, because they think it's all about takedowns and putting people in their place.
Yeah,
and
it's dumb as fuck.
Oh God, it's so boring.
I mean, that's so boring. And I truly, I think all this is why people are always like, why don't they give more like conservatives in Hollywood, or have more conservative entertainment?
None of them have timing or punchlines.
Well, because that requires empathy. That requires a sense of other human beings to know what they're going through, even if it's as simple as what they're experiencing in the crowd. And like you're saying, even as simple as timing and punchlines and but knowing rhythms, you need to be able to sense people around you.
Yeah, and they're not reading anybody because they're concerned with themselves. Sometimes the right will like unintentionally like be really funny, like that time that the Turning Point kids dressed up in diapers at the campus because they were trying to make fun of the liberal snowflakes, right? But then it was just a bunch of 22-year-olds in like looking like baby diaper fetishists just hanging out on campus.
Like there's a lot of good content of like crazy things conservatives do to own the libs. Yeah, like remember they were all like breaking their coffee machines and stuff, and I don't know. It's like all you're doing is helping the environment.
Yeah, wait, you paid for that.
It's weird.
They have your money already, dummy.
Yeah, I mean that is. I guess that would be an initial question. And do you want to say like I'll just say it here too. I'm a dummy, you know. I do my
I'm dumb
best.
As hell. I wrote today that my astrological sign is dumb as hell with like dipshit rising.
Yeah. Well, we have a similar chart then. But just like I'm gonna do my best to be as unproblematic as possible. Yeah. and not in the sense of, I think a problem that we're having in this point in history is like people are more concerned with not saying the wrong thing so they don't appear problematic than actually being not problematic, than actually understanding anything.
Yeah, and I think sometimes getting caught up in the fear of saying something wrong can like lead you to do it. It's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you stop like completely listening to the person that you're trying to engage with, and instead you're like, what does that person want me to say, or what should I not say? And I think I finally figured out if I'm a white person, so I just, from the time that I grew up, and especially in the environment I grew up, I was getting racism injected into my upbringing every day. So there is.
How do you mean?
Like, I just grew up with a really racist family. There's like a lot of white supremacy problems.
Gotcha.
Just everywhere. And then I think that every white person has to kind of come to terms with the fact that like you're going to have biases and stuff that you might not even consciously know about. Yeah. And so if you can accept that, then you can say, well, all I have to do is try to be thoughtful about it. Right. And if I step in a mess, I have to not get defensive about it.
Does that help you deal with people who are still confused or don't really understand the aspects of like being trans or even being gay or anything like that?
I think.
Do you know what I mean?
It's really easy to tell if
outside of someone's reality that they've grown. I mean, that's the thing I think about all the time is we're only a sum of our experiences, and we do have to make room for people to like learn new things.
Absolutely,
you know.
And I think, and I mentioned a little bit to you before, I am a comic, so I want to be in the public eye. Right. I came out late in life, so I'm dealing with this.
How old are you?
I'm 31.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I came out.
You seem much younger. I would not get that. I mean, I'm 32, but
we're like the same age, but you look like my older brother.
Yeah, I do feel. Yeah, I do. But even that, I tend to like wherever I'm supposed to be, quote unquote, in life. I feel like I'm living like a much younger person, you know. But that might just be our generation, you know.
Oh, for sure. And so I had to really come to terms with the fact and make peace with the fact that I am always going to be somebody's first interaction with a trans person. It can be in person, it can be online, it can be, you know, them coming to see me in a play or something. And so I decided I'm just going to accept it, and I'm going to make education and activism part of what I do as part of my act, and just be genuine to say, if you want to ask a question, first of all, just try Googling it. There's probably not a question you have that Google cannot answer for you immediately.
Right.
Then after that, if you have a question, you can come to people who like tell you it's okay to ask questions, like me. If you think you have a question, as long as it's in good faith, and as long as you know that I might tell you, like, hey, just so you know, that is offensive. So be careful to maybe not ask that to, like, if you see a trans person working at the grocery store, don't ask that person. They're just trying to live their life. They don't want to speak for a living. Right. I do. So come talk to me, and I'll answer any question you have, and I'll help set you on the right way of that. Because, you know, if you're coming with good intentions, I want to help you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I do appreciate you going down this road. I am, because we talked before a little bit. I will say in advance, as we get into this whole talk, I am less interested. What I'm trying to say is I appreciate that you're going down the road of the political questioning of like where we are politically and culturally.
Yeah.
Because what I'm really fascinated, I find great inspiration, and I feel like I'm struggling a little bit even as we get into this. I feel emotional immediately because I don't know you that well personally, but you are a very impressive person to me, just being you. And people,
likewise.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'm not just saying that. I don't like most people.
Well, thanks, Reed. I just, I want to say, like, people, I think everybody struggles to be who they feel like they really are. Like from anybody, even the most fucking cis heteronormative whatever person.
Yeah.
And
like,
and
I feel
me,
like you have to, we should unpack the fact that it's okay to be those things.
Yeah. I just mean, like, I never understand, like anytime I meet a dude, because I'm a fucking dude, right? I am a dude, and I have a lot of like dude instincts. I love combat sports, and that never goes away. And I never understand like the men who seem really upset that like their dude values are not celebrated as much or something anymore, or their perception.
And I can tell you what I think is happening there, because I am kind of opting into it.
Sure.
Because I'm transmasculine. And there was a really great article the other day. I'll try to get you the source of it, about this woman saying, for a long time, I thought I hated masculinity, but it just turned out I hated what they call toxic masculinity.
Sure,
and people,
of course.
But she said, by hanging out with queer people, butches, transmasculine people who know how to be hard and strong, but also considerate, she said, it's rebuilding my relationship with masculinity.
Yeah.
And like she realized, like, a lot of the shit that I actually am hung up on masculinity was just the way my father treated me.
That makes sense. I think that makes sense. I think because that's the only way you've received an example of masculinity. That's like that's somebody who's supposed to love you, and our father figures and anybody who's above us who is supposed to love you. I do think we interpret whatever they do to us. We go forward in the world and be like, oh, well, that must be what love is. Yeah. And so we kind of reenact it and to break out of that. But my thought to finish was just that when we celebrate queer values or feminism, we're really talking about making it okay for everyone to be whatever they are. Like,
yes,
permissiveness and allowance for the straightest, fucking most privileged people, whatever, to like finally be like, these rigid, very toxic roles that society, a capitalist, patriarchal, colonial fucking society has created for us, are allowed to. You can just be. I saw. I talked about it on here a little bit before, but do you know who Taylor Mack is?
Who is that?
It's this drag performer and artist, and they did this show I saw recently. But their show was so powerful to me because of the overwhelming sense of like permissiveness, and that an ironic thing I think in all art and culture that's associated with like queer art and culture is that it's very radical. But the irony is like the radical idea is that everything's cool. Like you can be whatever you want to be. No big deal. You know?
I think if you want to get a really powerful sense, I think drag, like you said, is the thing to look into right now, because the culture of drag is changing too. Because for a long time, it really was, this is for cisgender men, gay men, to put on the persona of womanhood and exaggerate it.
Right.
In order to celebrate it or lampoon the sexism in our culture. But now we're seeing that it can really for drag queens, rather. There are drag queens too.
Yes.
But now we're kind of seeing it that it is a way to exaggerate all of this shit that all of us are expected to be. Mm-hmm. So a cisgender woman can put on that same exaggerated femininity, and she's saying just as powerful a statement as RuPaul in a dress, you know? And I think that's lovely.
I do too. I think that's actually very important. I have known women who have a little bit, like, you know, they know they're not allowed to say it, and they, you know, whenever, but like have a little bit of frustration with drag stuff because they feel a little bit like they're not like this thing that they've been punished for thousands and thousands of years, like being a woman and being like made, is like somehow also being taken by men to a certain degree.
Yeah. And
you know?
When there was some pushback from the RuPaul's Drag Race, RuPaul kind of like stepped in it a bit and was like, this is just for gay men. It really did feel that way. It kind of like, and it was especially problematic of him to say that because transgender women have been part of and probably contribute a lot of the culture of drag queens. They've just always been there. But for a long time, we didn't have the vocabulary to label the difference between a drag queen, a transvestite, a trans woman.
Right.
So some trans women in the 70s, 60s, earlier, they would self-identify as a transvestite or a drag queen. But we now know that context clues, they were probably actually a woman themselves. And Peppermint, who was on I think 2 seasons ago of Drag Race, she just was the first one during the competition to say, yeah, I'm a woman. Yeah.
Would you mind, I guess I don't really know the difference between then transvestite, trans woman. Like, what is the difference?
Oh, okay. A transvestite, for the most part, is somebody who usually a man, and he likes to dress up in women's clothing, and it can either be just for empowerment's sake, or to tap into his femininity, or even it can be something slightly fetishistic. You know, it can be a kink. Whereas a trans woman is separated from all of that. It's all like all of the essentialist parts of gender. The parts that they're like, you have to have all of these things to be a woman. Completely decontextualize that and just say, I am a woman.
Got it.
Yeah. It's like people want to say like women and trans women, but you have to realize that trans is just the describing word. So it'd be like saying women and black women.
That's really good. That's really good to understand.
So yeah, trans women are women, trans men are men, and non-binary people, they're going their own way, baby.
Yeah. Well, see, that's I think what is so amazing about it, and why these movements should be supported by all people, no matter how much you fit a paradigm that exists already and is celebrated already. Because I guess because you just fucking don't know who you're going to be tomorrow. You might know who you've been your whole life. You might not. And the idea that we would create any rules in a society that say people should be this way or this way, on the most basic level, it sounds insane. Sounds like so draconian and fascistic.
Oh, honey, I do not understand how anybody can be hateful towards another person when the person is just different from them and they're not hurting anybody.
I mean, this is like something that comes back to me all the fucking time, is like, you learn in kindergarten how to be a good person. You know, just be nice to people, let them be whatever they are.
But then I think part of it is like, as soon as you get out of kindergarten, you start being told you need to be the best. Yeah. And you are the best.
That's interesting. I think that's true. I also think by the time you get to puberty, you get weird chemicals in your body that start making you less than your higher self sometimes.
I can tell you, I understand that because I am literally going through a second puberty right now. I'm experiencing...
What's that like? Also, because you're going through like a male's puberty, and I'm curious about the difference. What is it?
I am hungry, horny, tired, and frustrated 1,000% more than I used to be.
Damn.
Yeah. Like my body is mutating, in like the best way.
Yeah.
And you know, it changes the way your brain works. Like these are literally the chemicals that power everything in your, a lot of things in your body. Like you know, it's even like this is some tea, because a lot of people don't know this, because they haven't done studies on it. Testosterone can actually change your sexuality, your preferences.
Really?
Yes, because it's happening to me, and I can also report that sometimes there will be, and I can only speak for like transmasculine stuff. I'm not sure what happens with women when they are or non-binary people who go on estrogen. There are people who report their entire lives they had been a lesbian. Now they just want to suck that D. There are people who've been gay, just been with men, and now they're like, oh, I actually can. Instead of just objectively knowing that a woman is beautiful, I am actually attracted. There's like a sensual connection there.
Yeah.
And that's happening to me a little bit more.
Wow.
I would say that I'm probably homo-romantic, to use the most Tumblr word for it. Like where your sexuality, like your, the boning part is I'm mostly into dudes.
Yeah.
But I also like can feel like an intimacy with women now that is more sensual and like sexual. So I think I'm probably just like a little bit flexible on that. Yeah, but nobody tells you that, and I think it's because even doctors still don't know a lot. I actually, like, almost every trans man I know and every non-binary guy I know that we talk in our groups say that they have to correct their doctors often.
I think that's so interesting, like, because in a wider sense, I think and I don't mean to take away from it. I just think there's so much to learn that's applicable. Like, people might listen to somebody who's, you know, trans or different from them and go, wow, that's different from me. But to me, there's like everything you're going through feels directly applicable to experiences in my life and a million other people's lives, where it's like, we really don't understand why we are what we are or how we are. And I think it's shocking how difficult it is for people to truly get out of their own experience.
Right.
And believe in their guts and their fucking sex parts, that like a reality would be different for other people than it is for them. Yeah, no.
And I think the disconnect that we're having, because, you know, a lot of people are like, well, if being a woman is not about having ovaries or, you know, being able to bear children, then what does make a woman? So I think what's happening is we don't have this, the science hasn't caught up.
Yes. Which PS is really outside of the political stuff and implications. What I really want to get into your thoughts on are what is because masculine, feminine in the yin yang sense, and like this idea of like an energy that's like hard or so, like I think we misgender a lot of concepts also. Like strength is something that we gender, that we say strength is masculine
and weakness is femininity, and I think that's where a lot of our problems with like sexism and homophobia come from, is the idea of opting to be feminine is weak and repulsive.
Well, and I should say, I don't even, misgender is the wrong word too. I should have said straight up gender. Like strength is a thing that's a thing. Like men, women, you're strong. But that there are then some things that we acknowledge we do kind of fit into a camp of like, in the universal sense of describing spirituality or mythology or whatever, there's feminine and masculine.
Yeah. I think it's, it comes down to, and I don't get too woo-woo with like the stuff that I believe in, because like I do think being trans, part of it is like a spirituality thing, and I think that's where a lot of people, especially the ones who don't necessarily want to do the physical transition, I think a lot of it, or like the two-spirit community in Native culture, that is like a religious right.
I don't know what that is.
That's usually where you. It's kind of like adjacent or equivalent to being transgender, and that's where like it's usually a religious rite. So please don't just appropriate that term and say you're two spirit. A lot of them are like, I am a man, I'm a woman, I'm neither, and I'm non-binary, so I identify with that. In my like soul of souls, I know I'm not a man and I'm not a woman. But if I were to say, if I were
you read,
yeah,
you know
me,
that.
if I were to say like, we have like if we have that whole spectrum, that yin and yang thing, where one end of it is masculinity and one end of it is femininity, and then the center is like just straight David Bowie androgyny. Like I put me a few clicks towards the male side.
Gotcha.
But like if it was a bus route, I don't get off at the end of the line. You know, I get off before that. Yeah.
I mean, and I'm sorry, I'm going to get up and we'll probably get some bleed and sound, but my house is too hot to leave this window closed.
No, we're going into summer.
I think as we move down the road, like, and this language becomes more available to people, and this understanding of this spectrum is like, to me, that's the like why, if anybody has problems with this. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say there's like liberation in this concept for every human being, because I know as a guy who grew up, who by all rights is just a straight white male, like I feel really fucking weird. Those ideas of masculine, feminine, and I feel like I got more comfortable engaging with it just because of theater and stuff like that. You know, these communities that are more expressive and open and on and whatever. And I think for whatever reason, I just started being like, I don't know. But also as somebody who's like, just has the privileges that society gives me as this identity, I'm not like interested in like being like appropriating all the queer stuff and being like, I'm queer too. But the point is, I think everybody is a lot of different things, and trying to say like, oh, we know the words for this thing that I am, and I've known it since the day I was born, is so fucking wrong. Like,
yeah, and we've been doing it forever, by the way. Jesus talks about trans people in the Bible.
Really?
Yeah, the Bible. And the word for it at the time was a catch-all for anybody who was basically queer. It was a way to it was basically synonymous with like eunuch. And I'm not sure what that meant for people assigned female at birth, because I feel like it was mostly talking about like maybe men or people you would identify as men being like, no, that's not the case. And they were usually made into eunuchs. They were made into like servants and stuff like that. And there was the stigma even back then. And there are passages where in the Bible where Jesus says, no, actually, those people are chill as hell. If anything, because man is not actually, or God is not actually a man or a woman. The Holy Spirit part,
right? They
are maybe even closer to God than we are.
Right. That's so interesting.
And that's in the Bible. Yeah. So that's my interpretation. But I think it's really funny when people try to justify their homophobia or their transphobia in the Bible, because not many passages exist that explicitly forbid it, and the ones that do also forbid stuff like eating shellfish, and say that you can sell your daughter, and say that you can't even mix textiles.
Dude,
if you wear a polyester blend, you are as bad as a faggot.
Hell yeah. When I was a kid, I like loved, when I was go to church, I'd get bored. I loved reading Leviticus just because I like lists. I don't know.
Oh, hell yeah.
And it's so insane and entertaining to get into that shit and be like, just these weird, all these specific weird birds and shit that you're like, they're abominations.
Yeah, and they don't realize, because I grew up Southern Baptist, so honey, I know a little bit. Is when Jesus came around, they're like, a lot of this doesn't matter anymore. Like, follow the 10 Commandments, accept Jesus as your savior, you're tight, you're good.
I don't know if I've said it on here, but I'll just say it again. I have this theory about the New versus Old Testament, like, just my overarching theory about it is like the First Testament is you have this figure of God being like, I don't fucking get it. I created these people. I tell them what to do, and they keep doing the things I tell them not to do, and I just don't know why they would do that.
Yeah.
And I keep sending floods and destroying their cities.
Which is the most interesting thing about God, especially in the Old Testament.
Well, so I feel like he's like, I don't understand. What are you guys doing? I tell you what to do, and you keep doing. And they kind of, the response kind of is like, well, you know, if you think it's so fucking easy to be a person, you try it. And then he's like, oh, all right, I will. And then comes down and is Jesus.
And they're like, oh, actually, we can't handle this.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, it's just like, hey, just love each other, you know? Like,
and they were like, that sounds insane.
Yeah.
Kill that man.
Yeah, exactly. It's like as soon as you're in a human body and the figure of Jesus just is not accounted for like 30 years of figuring shit out, and still like flips over tables when he sees money in the church.
Yeah. And, is straight up a communist by saying, I'm going to feed everybody with these loaves and fishes.
Yeah.
He didn't turn away any of the gay people, just saying.
No, Jesus is socialist as hell. And
his best friend was a whore.
Yeah. Yeah. And best friend. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we don't know. We don't know. He's,
Yeah, we won't. I don't want you to get
I
too
just
many.
always
I
think
don't want you to get too many emails.
No, the thing is, like, I mean, I don't. I think the Bible comes up a surprising amount in this. For like, I don't practice, you know, outside of like, I love the holidays and stuff like that. I don't go to church. I haven't gone to church since I was a little kid, and
Yeah.
even when I was a kid, we weren't like super religious. We went consistently. I learned the stories, and this is like a weird coincidence because the interview I did just the other day with Erin Robinson, she is still a practicing Christian, and so we talked about it a lot. I just think it's very important, as much as you don't like it and you associate it with the politics that have like hijacked it into this disgusting thing. It does help you understand the way this society has structured itself, the tools of control, the like things, the basic morals at the center of it, to look at like Abrahamic faiths and understand those texts, even just as literature. And also, quite frankly, there's some very beautiful, I think about the lily of the field idea like all the fucking time.
No, there is some beautiful prose to be had in the Bible.
Yeah.
It's just that like it just gets co-opted by people with agendas that aren't necessarily in the best interest of everybody.
Well, I've been thinking about that. Not to like go too down this political road or something, but I just think it's interesting, and you know, we can't separate politics and art and culture from mental health. It's our fucking reality. But that words and the and the meaning of them, like freedom or the you know, liberty for all, or what being an American is, or racist, like people will straight up be white supremacist racist, be like, I don't think black and white people should live together, and then you'll say you're a racist, and they go, no, I'm not, because in their brain they just think racist means bad.
It means that like they think that it means that you want those people to not exist, and I think that they're not following the logic that the way that all of that would have to happen, you know, like the white nationalism.
Well, that shit's fucking
it's like
crazy.
You would have to kill. You would have to do a genocide to make that happen. That's what I think about them too.
And it's, I mean, not to get too, because I'll get furious, and I think we're living.
We don't want to start breaking stuff in here. I will get mad too.
Time, but like when Trump was doing his immigrant thing, and everyone who wanted to vote for the non-immigrant thing was like saying like, oh, you know. It's fine. We're just gonna get them out. It's like, how do you think that happens?
Yeah, like, the last time we started like putting people on a bunch of trains and shipping them off places did not go well.
How do you think that happened?
Yeah,
dude, I can't even. I was losing my.
So
that shit's so evil. The ICE is straight up fucking evil.
ICE is Gestapo.
They seriously are, and also not to get political, but they should have their heads cut off. No, but like truly though, ICE hasn't even been around for like more than 8 years. They're not like cops who are coming to get us right now.
No,
apparently.
because cops. Although I don't like cops either. Cops usually at least follow jurisdiction.
Yeah,
and they don't fucking just pick people up and lock children in internment camps.
Exactly. They at least ostensibly are here to protect and serve, to do something.
They're protecting people's property.
Yeah, exactly. Or at least on some level, like, oh, they'd try to stop a murderer if he was going to attack you with an axe, and they were there. Like hypothetically, ICE is explicitly only there to Gestapo people,
to round up
the
undesirables, as Donald Trump calls it. Yeah.
Anyway,
let's get off this topic before
vote socialist as fuck, please. Let's like save this goddamn nation.
Yeah, honestly.
Anyway,
should we talk more about like
So I'm. What should we talk about? What do you want to talk about?
You had mentioned like you want to know like you had asked like if I suffer from any mental illness, and besides PTSD.
We'll get into those cues. Let me take a quick pause. I have to pee really bad. I drank too much water, and maybe we'll cool down from like this fucking. No, it's me. It's us. We're.
I have no medium opinions. I have a strong opinion about everything.
No, that's a good trait. Okay, one second. And we're talking.
I'm
Thank
talking.
You. I'm back. I was just saying that I was full of pee, and that was probably making me extra agitated. So
yeah.
But I also thought, to turn it bright, is like, look, they're coming to take us away first.
No, they heard us.
But just that. The thought that's making us so mad is that there's this evil that seems to be happening and we don't know what to do about it. But I'd like to think that what we're doing right now is literally something about it. Oh, God, that really is.
Yeah, we live in LA. This is just like every 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's just normal life. But just like, Thank you again. Like, just any kind of understanding we have for each other, and that, like, just in this conversation that helps everybody out there, like, fucking not feel alone in their craziness or in their, like, differences or whatever. I really think this is the work of making the world better.
Yeah.
So let's, like, I'm, like, resetting into, like, no, but we're doing a good thing. Even though there's all this horrible evil out there, this is good.
No, I think if you lose optimism, that's how we lose.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you.
You're going to have bad days where you don't want to be optimistic or you don't want to feel like you have hope. But you have to just like keep resetting every day and be grateful that you get another day.
I was having
that sounds like AA stuff. I'm sorry.
No, but don't be sorry. I love that. We had my friend talk about AA stuff on here. I think like weirdly to this theme of like what to me the truly like the mental health importance of like understanding to me like the trans experience, the queer experience in general is permissiveness, is to say like whatever you are, whatever works for you is okay, as long as it doesn't obviously like fuck with other people.
Yeah, but and besides like that, those identity things, I have felt so much healthier once I just started talking about everything.
Hell yeah.
I have like kind of. Obviously, I have parts about my private life that I don't talk about, right. Especially if I'm respecting somebody else's privacy.
Right.
But I realized my work got better. My comedy became more relevant and easy to connect to when I stopped just trying to be like, what's a take on cookies? and started being like, oh, I should talk about everything that I have never even allowed myself to talk about in therapy.
Yeah. Fuck.
And that is when my work got better.
I think I would extend that out and say for anybody, once you start doing the things that you're really afraid of, saying the things that you really think, that's like when you do have to do the work of figuring out if it's something you really think. I think a lot of people confuse opinions with a point of view. Like,
exactly. You know? Especially if they didn't necessarily arrive at it themselves, but got fed it by some shithead who is a pseudo intellectual, Jordan Peterson.
Fuck yeah, I agree with that completely. What a dipshit.
Redistribution of sex.
Fuck, I want to God, that shit is like mind blowing.
And like all of these people,
that's the same as the immigration thing. P.S. Of like, how do you think that happens when they're like, no, we're not talking about sexual slavery of women. How do you think what you're saying?
No, I think, we're gonna get too hyped up again. But like,
we should just start a podcast that's just like, what the fuck? It's called What the Fuck every week, and it's just like, no, maybe it's called What do you think happens?
Yeah,
that's what it's called. How do you think that works? Piece of shit.
But no, I gotta just talk about everything, and then I have to try to find like little places where I can be grateful when the day sucks.
Yeah, I also think like just how you can make things funny that are miserable. That happened to me. I was having a terrible depressive episode, and I was, I like to think that I have survived my own suicide. Like I think to think that I've gotten through that phase of my life and it won't happen again. But the fact that it's making me emotional right now makes me know like the wolf is always at the door.
Feeling comfortable enough to talk about it, not just with me, but like to your audience. That's fucking cool.
I don't know if I've like talked explicitly about that, but
and you don't have to go into any detail,
and I will. I mean, I'm asking you. I'll be open as a fucking book. But like, I think the Kate Spade thing or the Robin Williams thing when it happened, like there's people who kill themselves still in the culture that they really scare me when it happens, because I'm like, damn, I think I've survived it. I think it was like really bad in my late 20s and that was it, and I've figured out that I'm not going to do it. But then those happen and you're like, ooh, if you don't take care of yourself and that demon, like that wolf comes for you maybe.
Do you think that inclination to be surprised is because like we always figure that people who have been around longer have their shit together?
Yes.
Like that sort of like scam that every adult tells children about, like, I know what's going on, and then when you get to adulthood you're like, oh no, everybody is just doing this shit on the fly all the time,
screaming naked,
they're absolutely
on fire.
Wrong about some stuff.
Absolutely.
And like you can go into old age and be isolated, and that's super depressing, and we have to be honest about that.
Yeah. And if you're not, because the other thing is I guess like that if you don't talk about it, if you're not open about like your actual real experience of things, like that stuff festers, and then you really are dealing with it alone. And I've come to learn very much, I as much as I love the masculine cowboy romance of like my fucking bootstraps and I'm gonna deal with everything.
I want to be like, sometimes I'm like, I want to be Ernest Hemingway so much.
But didn't he fucking drink himself to death? I always think that,
exactly.
dude, like D-Days, like D-Day was today, the anniversary of D-Day.
Yeah.
And there's people love to do this trope, this snowflake trope of like 18-year-olds in D-Day were running into machine guns and now they need safe spaces. And you're like, oh yeah, that generation of men was a great example of how to deal with your feelings. None of them drank themselves to death. None of them like beat their fucking wives and kids. None of them were completely
all of them
miserable.
are very it's easy for them to access their emotions, even to themselves. No, it's awful. We have we are just now coming into a time where men are allowed to admit any weakness.
Yeah, well, also, like, let's see where this country is.
Or vulnerability, I should say, not weakness.
Like, I also think give it 20 years and we'll see, like, you'll see how willing, like, quote-unquote soft people are to run into machine guns if the reason is there. Like, I'm talking about fucking fascists.
Most people are having to fight for their lives. I consider myself a giant sissy baby, but I have kind of gotten myself into the mentality that if I have to defend myself, I will. Well,
okay, I have big thoughts about that, which we should come back to in just a second.
Yeah.
To finish this one about just like to make it bright, like, so I was like having this horrible depressive episode, and I was talking to my girlfriend about it, and I was like, she's like, how do you? And I just kind of started trying to make jokes about it. I was like, well, I mean, I just feel like I should probably like put myself in a garbage bag and then find a garbage truck and like get in the garbage truck and then hopefully they'll cover the garbage, won't notice, and then they'll compress me and then I won't exist anymore. And then she was like, oh, but how are you gonna but they're gonna see your head like
so you guys are like going through the logistics of it.
And I was like, oh well, I'll just have to put another bag on top of my head and hopefully they won't see me. And then we're just like laughing about like my horrible self-immolation instincts. I have to make like jokes about these horrible thoughts you have because otherwise, like, where do they go? Like,
and it also can be a way. I was doing it just today. The stuff I was talking about had happened. I immediately started making jokes about it. I was like, hey baby, if I get hate crime during Pride, that means I get to be extra gay and you have to put up with it. And being like, oh, I guess you can't really say that you've made it as a trans comedian without being physically assaulted or threatened. It really is it was a way for me to get my sense of control back. It was a way for me to process what had happened. And I will say like the negative side of it, but it is mostly positive, but there is a little bit of part of me being like, can I deal with this right now?
For sure.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah.
Just the fact that you're fucking sitting here talking about it is like fucking, of course, yes, you can.
Yeah. And
just the fact that you've gotten to where you are in your life makes you stronger than fucking 99% of human beings that walk the earth. Let's be real.
Thank you.
Let's be real. No, that's true though. I mean, I always think that like just surviving is like an achievement, and to do it, I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah. My childhood was really rough, and for a long time, I minimized it away. I wanted to be normal so badly that I didn't want to say, like, my father abandoned my mother and immediately went and got another woman pregnant and raised that baby. And so I have a half-sister who's only 6 months younger than me that I met at 24.
You didn't meet her till you were 24?
Yeah. I didn't know that she existed.
Are you guys, how are you now? Do you guys communicate?
There's that part of it too. When I came out, I was already not talking to my mother because I went through a lot of abuse and neglect. And I'll just like say that. Sorry, this is like trigger warning stuff. About the worst stuff that you can think of. And then on top of that, the people who would have to bail me out when like my mom would have an episode and couldn't keep a job because she's also she's mentally disabled. She had a traumatic brain injury, so she kind of like didn't emotionally develop past the age of, I think, about like 14. That's what it feels like to me, because that's around the time that when I was about 14, I was like, oh, I'm kind of raising myself at this point. She can't really do a whole lot for me. Besides her, I had my grandparents who were conservative Christians who were super hateful in some ways, but they loved me. And so that was a complicated relationship and very toxic. I dealt with sexual assault. I dealt with the thing that happened to me at 14. I've dealt with a lot. And for a long time, I just pretended that it didn't happen to me. I think because I thought I could just wish myself normal in quotation marks, that I could just be like, well, if I can just get this out of my mind and just like look towards the future, then I will be functioning. But really, it was kind of like walking around on a broken leg. Mm-hmm. That's how my first therapist described it. She was like, you've been living with an injury your entire life, so why are you surprised that you are so out of it and in pain and like not able to function in your relationships and engage and connect with people?
Yeah.
I couldn't talk like this openly about this stuff a year ago. Like I had to write it down on pieces of paper and then read it out loud to my therapist. That was how bad it was. And it's still hard sometimes, I'll get like that like chest clenchy feeling where you're like, ugh. And that's where I think people need to realize that vulnerability and softness, is just as hard. It's like, it is strength because you have to push through the fear. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I've been through it, and I'm only now just being like, oh yeah, it was hard, but I also know there are people who have it worse, and so I just try to keep it in perspective that like I'm lucky I'm here, and I'm lucky that for the circumstances of my life that I have now, I'm very fortunate. I have a job, I have friends who like me. To go back to my family, unfortunately, when I started transitioning, they just kind of pretended that it wasn't happening. They kept using my old name and pronouns, and
which is a big fucking...
It is a big deal. Please don't do that. And especially if you knew the person before, or if you like figure out what their old name is, don't ask them about it, unless they talk to you about it. And then my top surgery came up. That's where you get kind of, if you're transmasculine, you get like a mastectomy that is specifically designed to like give you more of a masculine chest. And it is not as bad as other surgeries, but it is still major surgery. You're put under, and there are complications.
I think it's important, like, to remember any surgery is major surgery. My mom had a very routine surgery earlier this year, and like for sure almost died.
Yeah, the complications can be ridiculous.
Yeah. Like tiny complications.
Yeah,
like you can get horrible complications from one of the sutures being loose. That's what my mom, and like just it bleeds out, and you get this clot, and it starts to like suffocate your brain, basically.
Just the amnesia part alone.
Just that.
Did you know that anesthesiologists don't technically know how it works? They just know that it works.
Cool.
Yeah. So they have to explain these things to you, and they have, my family didn't call or ask about how I was doing or wish me luck, and that's when I knew fundamentally that these people were people who raised me, but they weren't my family. And that really sucks. And that only happened in January, where I had to tell them, like, you don't respect me. And also my partner at the time, it was my first gay relationship as a gay dude. And I had to be like, if you don't respect me, I know you're not going to respect him. And he also just came out of the closet, and I'm not going to let anyone hurt him. So I haven't really talked to anybody since January.
The thing you said earlier about the broken leg thing, like when you have these like traumas that you carry, I think like people really don't understand. Sometimes they will, like, the reason you're able to show up and be strong for somebody that you love now, like this boyfriend, is because you wouldn't be capable of protecting people if you were still broken. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think part of it also is a little bit of like a Batman syndrome.
Sure.
Where I was like, I was wronged. I'm going to make sure that nobody else can wrong people the way that I was hurt.
Yes, but I think that's good. And I think that's like understanding that, because I think there's a lot of martyrdom in our culture and stuff in general, and like people like scoff at the idea of self-love or self-care, and I think it hits a lot of our puritanically programmed brains still as like a kind of narcissism.
Yeah, like shame is like our currency.
Totally. Yeah. Like who can experience more shame, demonstrate more shame but understanding, like, if I don't fix my broken leg, I'm not going to be able to run. I'm not going to be able to fight for you. I'm not going to be able to stand up for you. Like, you have to heal your wounds so that you can show up for the people that you love and respect.
Yeah, put your oxygen mask on yourself and then help the people who need help with it.
That's so real. And also what you were saying about, like, a little bit ago, but coming to conclusion about defending yourself. Like, I think it's really, there's in self-defense psychology, there is one of the most interesting things I ever heard I've done a lot of time in like martial arts, different martial arts, and I focus more on quote unquote sport martial arts, which are just focused on like the techniques of functional fighting, but don't get too much into I think if you're interested in getting into like self-defense, quote unquote, it doesn't have to do with technique so much as psychological
like
ideas. Knowing
how to be prepared and then also like to know when you don't need to do it.
Yes,
right?
yes, but also I'm just even getting a little bit weirder is honestly understanding, trying to program your body to be ready to process the immense fear.
Oh, yeah.
And just the understanding like this is really happening. Somebody's really trying to hurt me, because our bodies and our brains, it's so anathema as good people to believe that's possible. And that, a lot of people, I guess in the self-defense stuff, they said a lot of times, often women have a tougher time with this than men, just because of the way they're programmed.
Yeah, women have to have a game plan.
Well, they have to have a game plan, but they also, it's most women, they are a majority in this, the anecdotal, like whatever understanding of the self-defense teachings was that like, if you gave them a scenario where their friend or their sister or somebody was being attacked, they would fucking go crazy and defend that person. But if you yourself are being attacked, they would just freeze up and not like you. The point coming to that it is very important to, I think, everybody to go through an exercise with yourself of understanding that you are worth fighting for.
Oh, that's great.
That
I
like
that.
One is worth protecting, you know?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I only got the sense that I was worth defending, and I was only worth being somebody who could help fight for others. Like recently, yeah. People say like not only do I look different and sound different, people are like, you're very different. Like you can actually have confrontational discussions and not be overwhelmed. I used to be the kind of person that when I got angry and women sometimes tell me they experience this too. And so this might be something hormonal. I don't know. Just like in a chemical sense, I would cry when I was angry.
I get that reaction, which is so interesting.
I would get so frustrated. But when you do that, sometimes it's like perceived as weakness, or that you're like becoming like too emotional to be rational. That doesn't happen to me anymore. And and it might be part of testosterone makes it harder for you to literally cry.
Really?
Yeah. It like messes with something in the tear ducts, but also I just don't get that. I don't feel angry in the same way anymore.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. Like the anger even manifests in different parts of my body now.
What do you think that's about?
I'm not sure. I think it is really just like the way that, because hormones are chemicals.
Right.
They are just affecting your,
but we usually associate testosterone with people having shorter triggers or like getting angrier quicker.
I think that, I'm not sure if that might be the case with like people who use it just to like if you're like a cisgender man and you decide to take it to like bulk up and stuff, that might be a thing. Well,
actually, I didn't even mean that, like, because roid rage is a big myth. I'm not gonna like get too down that road.
But trans men have reported that they actually feel way more mellow on it because they just feel more correct and healthy.
Well, see, that's what it seems like. I would think there's two thoughts that occurred to me when we were talking. One of them was like maybe from a chemical standpoint, the like traditional masculine like confidence, quote unquote, does sort of like if you gain, maybe there's some hormonal like foundation there that like the traditional masculine idea of a confidence would be make you less likely to be riled or to be like feel maybe. But just sitting here and listening to you, I would suggest that it seems more like you're just in touch with your truth in this
think that's
essential
what it
way.
is.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a science component to it, but I don't have a degree in it, so I can't speak on it. And like everybody suddenly, when it comes to like gender and hormones, suddenly thinks that they are like a PhD in chemistry.
Totally.
And I'm like, honey, even the chemists aren't sure how this is happening.
Right.
And
which is why I think it's important, and what we're doing. I'm a broken record, but I always say everyone's an authority on their own experience.
Yeah,
and hearing your experience with it is like, and the experiences of everybody who has their own individual experience is the only way that we start to understand.
No, I think specifically if you are not sure how to approach somebody who's trans, especially somebody who is non-binary and trans, and that's where you don't identify as a man or a woman, because a lot of times we want to figure out like, okay, what is it like? What's the deal with this? How can we like generalize so I can just understand easily? The more that you realize with every individual, but it's more pronounced with people who are different, you just have to trust that they are an authority on themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And they're telling you the truth about themselves. And there's not a reason to lie about something like this. People sometimes say that they're trans for attention. You don't want this attention.
That's the fucking craziest shit ever. You know what's interesting? You know that Oprah thing? Like when people tell you who they are, believe them?
Yeah.
Which it might be Maya Angelou through Oprah or something. But that thing I heard from Oprah.
Yeah.
It's so, I'm just having this epiphany of like, we usually hear that in the sense of like a savior complex. We stay with people who are bad for us because we're like, oh, I know what they are.
Yeah, but on the
they
flip
really
side, it can be a positive thing too.
Yes.
You can go, I can say, listen, I am not a man or a woman, but a lot of the things that you would label as like a man, like the physical body, and like other facets of masculinity that I identify with, I just don't label that as being a man.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that I don't necessarily have an easy categorization for what my gender is.
Right.
So I use the very like umbrella non-binary.
Sure.
There are other people who have like more specific definitions.
What pronouns do you prefer?
I use they, them, and I also am fine if you use like any like mask ones, like he. I realize there is a certain point where you just have to give people a break if they're strangers.
Totally.
So if somebody clocks me as a dude at the grocery store, I'm not gonna be like, did you just assume my gender?
Yeah,
you know, and like, which by the way, that kind of person doesn't. That's really a straw man. If there was like,
I totally agree with that.
If you do experience that, that was probably because you were saying something super, super mean. And you were probably the straw that broke the camel's back on that person's day.
Yeah.
But otherwise, most people are cool and we'll just be like, hey, actually, my pronouns are this. Can you do this?
I mean, dude, that's the fucking dumbass. That's why the internet's like grinding our brains off, is because it creates this hot take culture, this like hilariously, ironically binary culture where you're just like, I'm this or I'm that, and these are this and this is that. And we need to put everything as a definition and an understanding that we can all say it's this, instead of like a softness where like the life really exists in this twilight zone.
Yeah.
And I have not met a single person in my life that if you don't approach them with like true like well-intentioned kindness, respect for their fucking personage, like that isn't gonna be like cut you slack too as a person. Like
okay, I'm gonna say something really douchey, but I do believe it. Have you ever like in an acting class, they're like, if you forget your line or you get confused, look at your partner's eyes and then you'll figure out like how to get back on track. I think
have not heard that, but that's good advice.
It works.
Yeah.
If you are going up in a play or something and you're like, look at your person, because they're waiting for their cue line, so they're trying to trying to impact that right into your
brain.
I also believe the reason that works and the reason why we have so much fighting is because we are not looking each other in the eyes, and that's where our humanity is.
I think you're right. I also know for myself, I have a weird thing about eye contact where I'm like afraid of it.
I am too. I used to avoid it because my mom, a lot of things with my mom, she also had paranoia about people judging her, and so she would literally tell me, "Don't look at me."
Yes,
which is really weird to have your caretaker tell you.
Totally.
So I had to I had to do therapy, really intense shit where we had to stare at each other just so I could learn how to look people in the eye.
I used to say that about one of my first therapists, that like I was like I'd pay for it just for the uninterrupted eye contact. Like it's like this place you can do it.
Yeah.
It's funny that you said that your mom said that. Like that is my experience of it, is typically not a sensation of fear of other people. It's like I'm afraid that they'll see something in me that's bad, or they'll think that I'm trying to be invasive, or there's something.
It was a very submissive thing on my part. It was me wanting to make my mom happy, even if it meant I was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can admit that now.
Yeah. Sometimes when I look people, when I finally make eye contact, I just start crying. Like there is something very powerful in that is
It's
in
like
a connection
it can be a confrontation that is, not confrontational in like the sense of like adversarial, but it is very much like we're gonna just come up against each other and we have to see where the other person's at. And that can be hard to do, especially if you're not doing well.
Sometimes it's hard to look at your own fucking eyeballs.
Oh, no. And like there was a time, especially when my dysphoria was getting worse and worse and worse before I came out, I didn't look in mirrors.
What does that mean, dysphoria?
Oh, I'm sorry. Dysphoria is the term used to describe when, and specifically for gender dysphoria, that is when you know that the sex that you were assigned at birth, so like the meat suit that you wear, that you came out, and the doctor was like, that meat suit's a girl. You know that it's wrong. Or like the social aspects of like, I'm going to be raised to be the person who is nurturing and be the person who has all these other bullshit expectations. You know that it's wrong, and it causes you debilitating stress and distress.
There's the only that term. There's a thing called rejection sensitivity dysphoria I read about that they said in an article about ADD, adult ADD, and they said that it's a common trait in adults with ADD is this rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And reading about it blew my fucking mind because I was like, I felt very seen by this internet article.
Oh, that's good. Like, what? Can you describe
they
that?
They just said that it's basically like because you had said, do you mind if we're gonna get there later, but you had told me before that you also have ADD.
Yeah.
So this might be of interest to you, but that it basically was just like any perceived rejection, like, and it could be, and we're such empaths, we're so like attuned, because if you have ADD, they tend to be like very attuned to the reactions and feelings of people around them.
Yeah.
And not necessarily in an empathetic way, but
sometimes we mistake it for that.
Yes.
We're like, I know exactly where you're coming from. And they're like, my man, those vibes are misread.
Right. But that's very to this thing is any perceived like rejection or someone judging you or doesn't
devastating.
Like you. Yes. You experience like physical pain in your chest.
Yeah, dude, I got that. I recently got dumped, that boyfriend I was talking about. And the stuff leading up to it was a lot of cases of that.
Yeah.
Of me not feeling heard, and then us bumping heads, and then either I trying to cut and bail because I didn't want to feel that rejection, or it happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the rejection part, I still think that this person is like maybe going to be my one that got away, but a lot of it is also just me. Like that feeling of rejection is it makes you not want to get out of bed.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, it's fucked up. It's weird. I was surprised when I read it to have a word for it.
No, cool. Thanks for telling me because that diagnosis just happened. So I am still figuring stuff out.
I'll send you this article that was really fucking eye-opening to me about, because they said some stuff about ADD that was like adult ADHD that basically we have like even the hyperactivity people associate like, oh, they're hyper, that like a lot of adults, or at least the way it sets in adults, don't necessarily, I think they said a majority of them don't necessarily exhibit outward like jittery, but that you have they called it emotional hyperarousal. You have this inner life that is extremely fucking crazy all the time.
It's an anxiety disorder.
Yes.
In the same way that PTSD is, and a lot of the symptoms are comorbid. I don't think that's the right word. They happen at the same time. They overlap, and so it can be confusing.
Yeah.
So for a while, we were just trying to deal with my PTSD and those specific symptoms. And then I was like, oh, but also this stuff is happening.
Yeah.
And then they finally tested me for it and was like, oh, we gotta fix this.
Yeah.
Did you have in your case? Did you ever get like the brain fog stuff that happened?
I mean, that sounds like my whole life, so I don't know.
I was doing, like, it was getting worse and worse. I was doing stuff like I would get out of my car, put my wallet up on the top of the car,
sure,
leave my car parked in my alleyway in Koreatown, unattended with my wallet on top of it, and then come back the next morning and it was somehow still there, thankfully.
Yes, those kind of things for sure, all the time.
And
also, I would have
you feel so stupid and you're like, why did this happen?
Right. Well, I would always think it was really, I came up with this phrase to describe my physicality, where I was like that I feel coordinated but not graceful.
Oh yes. No, that's how I feel.
I was always like, I do jujitsu and stuff, and I'd be like a fucking cow. I was like, I can fight, I'm good when I pay attention, but then I just hit things and trip over things all the time.
No, and I people think that my comedy is going to be cerebral and stuff, but I'm actually super physical and super goofy, and I like to describe myself as like Maybe not necessarily like the amount of talent, but I like to like my style when I perform is like Chris Farley in a Chihuahua body.
Yeah, that's so funny. That's good.
Yeah, because I'm just like I explode sometimes.
Yes.
Onto things, not necessarily like in an aggressive way, but I just get hyped up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The brain fog thing too reminds me that of I would experience the most marked difference between being medicated. I'm on Adderall for a while, small doses, but they're life changing.
Yeah.
Is the feeling that all my thoughts previous to this like felt like it was like 40 people trying to get through one little doorway at once, and then I'll just cram up at the door. And that now it's like the ideas and thoughts and things I need to do and say just line up and go one after the other, and that's a very freeing.
No,
feeling.
it's like. This is what it feels like. Okay, I can do this.
Exactly what it feels like.
Whereas before you're like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do I do this? You know?
That's all you need to say. That's so fucking funny. It's very validating to hear someone else like who you don't know that well let you never talk about this.
This is the second time we've ever really gotten to talk.
Really? Yeah. And before it was kind of on camera with Dude View.
Yeah, like
so,
we sat down and we had to talk about like masculinity and stuff together.
Yes.
And then we'll talk a little bit on Twitter, but it is very nice to like just be like, yeah, I experienced this.
It honestly still feels like weirdly like magical, like we live in a simulation or something to hear your experiences come out of somebody else's mouth.
Yeah.
It feels very like connecting. It feels very
I think that's why art exists.
That's why art exists. Yeah, totally.
Because it used to be at a time where he's like, oh, I will do a painting so somebody across the world can understand how I felt about that subject.
Ooh, fuck. That's so interesting. That's really beautiful. Wow.
Yeah.
Really beautiful. Do you mind, before we get into these quick questions, I do want to kind of like revisit this thing about, I just want to ask you the whole thing about the spiritual, mythological concepts. When you think man and woman or masculine, feminine, like what do those mean to you?
I think it's very hard to pin down, but I think it has to all fall back down to what we are like when we are in the womb, when you are first developing as an embryo. I think this is like the embryo stage. Everybody starts out with the same body, the exact same body. And then certain things happen. Most typically, because I want to say there are a lot of variances because that's just how fucking science works. Most typically, if you are going to become someone who identifies as a woman, you'll have 2 X chromosomes. If you are someone who identifies as a man, you'll usually be born with an X and Y chromosome.
Right. Which is, like you're saying, there are people who come out that defy that's
yeah. There are so many different variances but typically, and so what happens is we all start with the same body parts even. And then it's kind of like it's like 2 construction sites that get wildly different foremen, and they're like, let's do this with this. So like you have the same natal genitals, and then they just develop differently. That's why if you kind of look at it, a clitoris, it's inside the body. It's shaped very much like a penis.
Yeah.
If you look at like labia, they're basically just like an empty ball sack on each side.
That's really funny.
It is all very much, and like that's why men have nipples.
Right.
It's like so many things. I think that's what it comes down to. That ultimately, we are an animal that just splits apart in a way.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why even heterosexuality persists is like the most dominant way, besides the reproductive parts, is just because it kind of like helps people feel whole. I think that's why people feel like you're my soulmate. It's like kind of like being like, you're the part of myself that I lost in my first moments of life. And for people who are gay, maybe they still feel that way, but it's like a different thing about that person that resonates the same way. So I think that's my answer. But who can know for sure?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never thought about that thing.
Yeah, I could be completely wrong. Well, honey, I got a high school education in science.
But like, it makes sense to me too that you can feel that some organisms would feel completion by matching or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that's why we love patterns. I think that's why we love finding our. That's why we're such a tribal animal. and like a communal animal is we're sometimes just feel like something's missing and we're trying to get it back by making those connections.
Yeah. That's so fucking interesting. All right. The other question I have that is, I don't know. I don't want to be offensive, but it's like something
go
I'm
ahead.
curious about.
I'm going to put this disclaimer. You can be problematic with me if you want to, and I'll just like let you know, like in general, like if I think other people, especially, I often think about like if someone is going to hear this, listening to this podcast, will they get real bummed? Will this ruin their day? Right. So I'll just give that disclaimer, maybe even just to make that person know, okay, somebody else is thinking of my interests. Yeah. So go ahead, lay it on me.
No, my thought was just, my question was like thinking about my own experience and how difficult it is to live in my vessel. Like I think about that all the time, like I feel dissociated with my body a lot of the time. I just don't. I think it's really important. The conclusion I've come to is that is understanding my meat mech as it's not me, but it's mine. And I have a sense of stewardship about it and a gratitude because it's the only lens through which I get to see the world. And,
exactly.
So my question, I guess, is and I guess I have a little bit of the answer for myself. It's like, who fucking cares? Be whatever you want to be. But for me, it's felt like an important journey to come to terms with what I got when I was born. Yeah. And
your potential.
Pardon me?
Like the potential of you. Yeah.
Yes.
Like this is what I have to work with. These are the colors on my palette that I'm going to paint with.
Yes. Yeah. And that I don't know. And I guess the question is why are you avoiding that by being trans or something like that, or is it just, I see as I'm asking it, I'm feeling like it's just an extension of that.
I think not everybody knows that they're trans right away.
Yeah.
So I think just by that token,
right,
having that epiphany of
late in life.
Oh shit, it's kind of instead of, I kind of say, because a lot of people will say that trans person is passing as cisgender. And a lot of people, even trans people, are that's my goal. I want to look cisgender so I don't have to think about this ever again.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I think, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, I'm sorry. I was muttering. So.
I think, okay. So for myself, I try to approach it the opposite way. For 28, 29 years, I was putting on a woman costume every day, and I was fabricating the potential that I thought people wanted me to have in order to love me. And then I realized how suffocating that was. Because can you imagine putting on a gorilla suit?
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, yeah, you're a gorilla. And not being able to take it off ever.
Right.
And especially the last couple of years, I looked way more feminine. I had waist length hair. I was trying to wear dresses and wear makeup every day, and I was trying to I was like, I'm gonna make it work, and it was almost like trying to force a puzzle piece in that doesn't fit. So I would argue that I've become more honest with what my potential actually is.
Yep.
I've become I've become so much more honest of a person.
Yeah.
When I stop lying to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, you live in a time when the tools are available to make more outward strong changes.
And even just the culture, I think the social part of it is so much bigger and so much more important, because there are many trans people. I want to emphasize that some people just don't want to change their body. They're fine with what their body is.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily experience the physical dysphoria. They have the social dysphoria of knowing that they present in a way that will be rejected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because I'm thinking now about the question that I posed, and it's really hard for us to get out of something I criticize on here all the time. Why do people got to know? Why do people got to know? This feeling of getting comfortable with just believing people that they know what's best for themselves, that they know who they are.
Yeah.
And that if
authority.
and if they don't fucking know who they are, that it doesn't that they're where they're at in their life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. You can only be where you are. So even if you are feeling super confused and you're like, I don't, because like especially for younger people, it's very, very common for people to feel the dysphoria but not be trans. That's why a lot of young women might bind down their breasts when they're developing. That's why young men might have those thoughts of like, am I gay?
Right.
I thought that one man was attractive. Does that mean I'm gay? And I think that which also feeds into the am I a woman? Because that's ultimately what homophobia comes down to, is like the fear of being perceived or that somebody is a woman.
There's Nico Case has a new album that just came out.
Oh yeah,
I really like Nico Case, and she had a line in one of the songs where she just goes like, she says, "I fucked every man that I wanted to be."
Oh,
and she
cool.
said that, and I was like, I was like, that is my experience with a lot of women in my life.
So I think that's what it comes down to.
But,
is that,
not
like,
being comfortable, not being like the strangeness of the fear of the murk of saying like I may be many things, and how scary it is to know like what if I don't know myself completely. And I think when you see other people who are exploring I think that is a common source of homophobia or things like that, is just being mad that other people are free, Oh,
for sure. Like the fact that
like a resentment that they got out. It's the crab in a bucket thing. You see another crab getting out of the bucket and you're like, get the fuck, what do you think you're doing?
Yeah. And also just like, it's also like inwardly, it's, it's a frustration that you, like maybe you don't feel brave enough to do it. I know for a long time, especially when I was younger, I was very angry and I would say problematic things myself about gay people, about trans people, because I had
we're about the same age. There was like when we were teenagers and we were like junior high, I think about the way like me and my buddies talk to each other in junior high.
Yeah,
and
did you guys play Smear the Queer?
We did not, but I've heard that. It was more like we would just call each other like gay slurs all day long.
Oh,
it's like every other word.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, and it's weird to think back on it, and I don't know.
And people
none
even
of those
still
friends are
say like that's gay just to say like that's bad.
Right.
Yeah, so like it's very strange.
It's very strange.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good that we're to this place of like we're paying attention a little bit more and we're trying better.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because I do think what you're saying, this idea of allowance also should go with like, especially when you're a kid or teen, like you're figuring shit out, you're going to do it in messy ways,
Yeah. Like honestly, just know it's kind of like any other skill. Like when you start something, you're going to suck at it.
Yeah.
And over time you'll get better and better, but there will always be that feeling of like, am I going to reach my absolute potential? Like, if you were writing something, eventually you have to be like, this isn't perfect, but this is the draft I'm going to submit and like let people read. Yeah.
That's what you're describing, PS, like as just a weird self-helpy thing is like, my friend Tony used to say, he said, he got it from someone else he knew, but that he said they don't want it perfect. They want it Friday.
Exactly.
And like getting used to that. I always think about like, there's not an artist in the world who doesn't like hate their first work or their first album, the ones that you might love, that they can only hear flaws in it. And just learning to accept that, like just to be generative, just to put things out and just always hold yourself to an intrinsic value of getting better.
Yeah. So I would say, for instance, if you have a young listener out there who's like, I might be transgender, but I don't know, just let yourself have the possibility of like, what if there wasn't a negative consequence to being this, to being yourself, and then be very thoughtful, be very careful. Don't rush into any decisions, because I think that's where people get scared is like, we're going to put these kids on, they don't put kids on hormones, by the way. Don't worry about that. But if you're like a teenager and you're like, should I bind my breasts? If you feel like you're in a position you can do it safely, like nobody's going to hurt you for doing it, and that with binders, that's when transmasculine people or women or anyone, they put on a special kind of undergarment, kind of like a bra, and it just squishes you down so you look like you have a masculine chest.
Got it. Yeah.
If you're like, I think I'm a cisgender woman, but I still want to bind just to see if that will alleviate anything, just do it. Mm-hmm. Like as long as you're doing stuff safely. And you're not hurting anyone else, I say explore things. Because you don't know, you might even stumble across a part of yourself that you didn't know was there.
I think what you're describing and you're bringing light to, and it's something I don't think about that often, but it seems to be very important to this whole idea of acceptance of yourself and others, is also like you use the word relieving. If you find this relieving, and I think it's like really wonderful to think about. This idea of truly dysphoria, the opposite of euphoria, that people may just be in this kind of agony, like this kind of pain. You described it as wearing a gorilla suit, this discomfort about going through life. And that I think maybe people who don't get it still think it's just like a random idea, or like the worst version is for attention. To really understand that it's relieving, that feeling you described with the AD.
And you said euphoria. Did you know that that's actually something in the trans community? It's you can do affirming things. This is the positive side of being trans that people don't talk about. If you say put on a suit and suddenly you feel amazing, you feel more yourself.
Yeah,
that's experiencing gender euphoria.
Right.
And that is the part that like is really affirming, and I think we need to talk about just as much as dysphoria, because if there's one thing that and I'm talking about all of this vulnerable stuff because this is what this thing is about.
Yeah.
But if there's something I'm not seeing in the media right now, it's trans people who are happy and healthy.
I totally get that.
It's always tales of woe.
Yeah.
It's always like, it's usually them getting murdered or hate crimed in some way.
Yeah.
And I want to see like a fuck up slacker trans person who works at a video store and who is like just trying to get laid. I want to see like a woman like a Reese Witherspoon rom-com with a woman who just happens to be trans.
Right.
That's the shit that I want to start seeing.
I totally get that.
Yeah, and so if you are somebody who's trying to cash in on us, maybe try that, because you're going to get a lot more revenue than trying to make us come out to see our own torture.
Well, I think something you just described is really interesting too. Like I think a lot about like beauty culture on YouTube and shit like that is like such a big thing. And sometimes, and a lot of like the kind of like Yas Queen culture of the internet these days, and even broader than that, like a lot of like I love Cardi B, but I was like listening to some Cardi B and I was thinking like everything's still stuck in this capitalism thing where like the tools of liberation as we are seeing them, to me, I perceive them as like you're just part of the same slavery mechanism, like as if usurping the position of the power, the person with the money, the person who can wait their whole life just to shit on people, like you're just buying into the same thing that hurts the people at the top too.
Yeah.
And I think there's an interesting thing you described is really, because there is this reality of like, if you're feeling down and you go like, I go get a pedicure, or like put some nice clothes on, or like use soap that smells good, that I'm like that. I guess what I'm trying to get at is that really works. That really makes me feel like I'm treating my body like a holy thing that I want to honor and take care of.
Yeah.
And
why shouldn't you? You're only going to get one of those.
Exactly.
That's the only body. That's the only brain.
I think
that's the only you ever get.
But there's got to be
potentially. I don't know.
I know. I just think having a consciousness around when you cross the line into like that, they're so weird because they're so parallel, like vanity and superficiality versus like this almost holy experience of adorning this precious thing that you have and treating it a certain way. And I
think it also just, vanity is seen as like a female thing. And like I said, femininity is just seen as weakness.
Yeah.
It's synonymous in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it's coming from is you're
nurturing
yourself. How strong is that?
See, that's it. I think there is a difference, though. I think there are people who, because everybody, like that you start to look at vanity and like, oh, I'm so ugly or whatever, and like I have to make this way or that way, and judgy, and that is toxic. There is a toxic version. No,
there is a very, very toxic part of it. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
And I think it's just like kind of paying attention to that. I'm starting to get weirded out like a little bit by popular culture that is like, I think starting to not realize like this celebration of like some shittiness, some vanity things, some things that make people feel bad that are masquerading as empowerment.
No, like when especially like I try to be like, as pragmatic as possible, but I really do think like the wellness community is just like a reframing of like toxic body shaming stuff.
That's so interesting.
Like
yeah,
these
I
women,
think there is some of that.
and I think they're like we aren't talking about how for instance, like eating disorders. We almost always think of it as like restricting, but there's also people who just like over rationalize and like overthink like being healthy to the point that it's not good.
Right.
Or you have people like Kim Kardashian who have more money than God and they are still hawking weight loss lollipops to children.
That's fucked up. Yeah.
That's the part that I don't like. It's tied to capitalism. But like allowing yourself to wear a beautiful dress.
Yeah.
Especially if someone is telling you that you don't deserve to wear that beautiful dress. Mm-hmm. It's so liberating and it's so nurturing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. I think we could do a whole fucking long thing about that nuanced line between empowerment and self-harm. Where like, I mean, I'm doing a thing now where I'm like tracking everything I eat and I'm doing this like lifting program. I feel my relationship with my vessel has become one because of like like combat sports and things where it's like becomes weight classes. And I talk about this. I have a friend who is making this program for me, but she's like a power lifter and bodybuilder that I'm really inspired by, where like we talk about each other's bodies and our own bodies in a way that's like almost like they're horses. Like there's just no judgment. There's like, you just understand it as this thing that is added up inputs, like the things you eat and drink and then what stimulus you give it. And it doesn't have any of the associations of like, self-hatred or judgment or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just like this practical conversation with yourself and trying to just play with it,
Yeah,
see
exactly.
like, oh, I can shape it this way. I can shape shift it this way. And that's such a like fun game to play.
Yeah.
As opposed to, but like that there is always, especially if, because I think I've also been very unhealthy with my relationship with my body, that it is this dance of like checking in with yourself constantly to be like, and maybe this is pertinent to this whole subject of like, are you living in your own truth? Are you coming from a place of toxicity and self-hatred and martyrdom and wounds that you were given, or are you truly coming from a place of like being in touch with your truth and your power and
like,
celebration?
Like listening to yourself, but also holding yourself accountable. Like there's so many parts of it.
Yeah.
About like just really, really listening to yourself.
Yeah.
And like listening to like what the world tells you, but like learning the difference of like, this is the stuff that I can push away if it's not good for me. Yeah.
All right. I know we're going long. Let me pee one more time and then we'll do the quick cues at the end. We'll wrap it up. All right. Thank you. We're rolling again. Just hop right back in.
All right.
Okay. I'm going to get my 6 quick cues. Let me pull up the things because I can't ever remember them myself, even though I do them every episode. The first one is, so is the one, have you ever been diagnosed with any mental things? And then the one on the tail of it is, do you take medications or have you tried medications or anything like that?
So as we've talked about, I am diagnosed with PTSD, ADHD. And then also, although I don't think that this is something that you need to have in order to say I am transgender, I did get the diagnosis of having gender identity disorder or dysphoria. Like there's like weird different terms in it because I don't even care too much, but it's something that a lot of times that they gatekeep in the medical community with, where you have to literally get a doctor to say this person's telling the truth about themselves. I
will say like definitely like the stigma feeling of like, I avoided a psychiatrist for a long time because I was like, oh, I'm going to forever be this now. Like any paper, oh, have you ever been diagnosed with a mental? I'm like, I guess so,
Yeah, it's so hard. And
but it just became a barrier to something that's truly helped me.
Yeah.
So it's
I happen to have suffered from physical dysphoria, the body stuff. So I did that and I got prescribed testosterone treatment to help with that. It's called hormone replacement therapy. I also got prescribed Adderall. Then we're trying that out. I'm not sure if that one's gonna work out.
Yeah.
And then I take Wellbutrin and I take 450 milligrams. It's like the max that you can take.
Wow.
Because I shifted to that one. Then we were like, we're not sure if Adderall's working for you properly.
Really?
So.
How did Wellbutrin help you or feel? What is that for?
Wellbutrin is I think it's primarily used as an antidepressant, but it's kind of different from the other ones. It's a stimulant.
Oh.
So you do have to be careful when you first start taking it. If you take it too late in the day, you're going to be up to like 4 a.m.
Got it.
Kind of like Adderall.
Yeah.
And it might have been because I was taking Adderall and Wellbutrin together.
Is it an SSRI? Do you
know?
No,
I don't. I think it might be different.
Yeah, I think that's different. Yeah.
Yeah. But it just gives me so much more of like I just feel relaxed in my environment.
Did you feel a big difference when you started medication compared to?
Yeah, and like do know that like if you feel like kind of crappier in the beginning, just know like sometimes your body just needs a chance to get used to it.
Yeah.
And I had
and also I want to add to that, like, stay in contact with yourself and your doctor, because like these things, there is a lot of like, hey, guesswork, trying stuff out, seeing what fits with you.
Yeah.
And
don't feel bad if you're like, if you finally have to go like, no, this isn't working for me.
Yeah.
Cause like it's kind of shitty that I basically started all three of these things at once. And so I am just now coming out of the fog of like, I was just feeling insane, not to be ableist about it, but I was just feeling like really out of like control of myself.
Right.
Because I had the testosterone that was finally starting to absorb fully into my body around the 4 or 5 month mark, because it takes some time. I was having Wellbutrin that like my doses were getting up. And so I was sometimes just not being like super the best to be around. I was grumpy. I would, even more than usual when you have ADHD, I would like be like, what? I'm jumping right into this, you know, instead of being like, I should think about what I want to say first.
Can I ask you with the testosterone? Can I ask a question about this?
Yeah.
Did you feel like, because the age old terrible comedy stuff, like guys are like this, girls are like this,
Yeah.
like.
Do I feel like are you asking if I can confirm any stereotypes about genders?
Or like if you felt any like big changes? You already said that you felt like hornier and like stuff like that, and hungrier. Like I'm just curious. Yeah, like what's that? Because I mean, it does feel like having been growing up a boy and stuff. Like there was a thing where things kicked in where you were just like, I don't think you understand like what I'm experiencing. I'm not trying to be a gross guy. It's just a thing.
In general, I will say, having gone through both puberties, it's just so intense. That's why every teenager feels like a hot mess.
Yes.
Because you might be having different hormones doing these things, but your body and your brain chemistry is just being thrown out of whack from what it's been used to for like 11, 12 years.
Yeah.
So I will say, slightly different things, but there cannot be absolutes. And
of course not.
Like for instance, like, I don't necessarily feel anymore.
I didn't mean to like undercut our whole pretty good conversation.
No, not at all.
Is there stereotypes true?
No, because what you have to remember is trans people think about these things too.
Yeah.
We try to keep our more problematic conversations like in-house so we can just figure it out and then know what to tell the rest of the people.
Yeah, totally.
But there were times where I was like, am I going to become more macho and chauvinistic? What's going to happen? Am I going to lose my ability to hate men?
That's really funny. What happened? Did you?
No, I'm still a misandrous till I die.
Hell yeah.
No. I think if anything, the stereotypes that I was able to confirm were the stereotypes of how men and women are expected to be treated.
Oh.
I definitely noticed that when I talk now, I get interrupted less. I get talked over less. I am not accused of being bitchy or angry as much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And
do you think that's an outside thing, just how you're received, or are you saying that you think part of that's like how you present yourself?
I think it's partly confidence that I can be like, no, I have enough self-worth that I'm worth listening to.
Mm-hmm.
But I also do think that it's just a culture of men kind of have the clipboard and women take the orders. That's just my personal feeling.
Yeah.
Like that's just the essence of like, I even like my feminist bros, even I fuck up and like interrupt. Like yesterday I had my friend Zoe over and we were talking about stuff and like she started to talk and I interrupted and I've been trying to get the habit of, no matter who it is, but especially women.
Yeah. I
stop and I go, sorry, I interrupted you. What were you saying?
That's good.
Yeah.
I gotta get better at that.
No, and I don't know if maybe it is something to being a guy that you're just like, listen to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I think because I definitely feel like when and sometimes I think it's an ADD thing. It's weird, because it doesn't feel like you're interrupting. You just feel like I got a thing I gotta say. You know?
You just get so excited that you realize you stopped listening.
That's true. I do that. I'm guilty as fuck of that. I think that's like a very puppy dog quality about. I mean, that's the thing about to me is in the best, not to make excuses for it, but the best versions of it is like you're just an idiot like a dog is. Like you don't mean bad things. You just like have this instinct to like.
We're earnest.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think there's like a very
no, but I've tried. Like it's made me understand being on the other side of it. Also, I can't just smile at a baby or child in public anymore. Because men, have you ever experienced it? Like it's hard to like have connections with children.
Oh yeah,
like. You're less trusted to be a babysitter or anything, you know. There are understandable like concerns and scare.
Totally,
but you know, you haven't done anything to deserve that. I am not as wary walking around at night by myself anymore.
Yeah.
But I do realize that that's probably a false confidence. There's nothing to say that I'm still about as strong. I'm maybe a little bit stronger now that I'm working out, but I'm still the same size. Someone could just come and fuck me up as easily as they did before.
That's interesting.
I
it really does feel like a different, like just an internal feeling.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to tell how much of it is what is bouncing at me and like being absorbed, and then how much of it is what I'm putting out. I don't know.
Sure,
it's really hard to say.
But but your lived experience is different. Yeah, that's really good. Okay, all right. I think that's a good. They covered up those two. What's something cheesy you find inspiring?
Oh, okay. Sesame Street.
Oh, good answer.
Yeah, like you know, they are subversive in all of the ways that matter.
They are
because they take very lofty things. Mr. Rogers did this too. And he was even more radical about it. Go watch the documentary that's coming out this week.
Of course,
this
I'm going to.
Yeah.
It's very funny that you and Aaron, who I recorded yesterday, both brought up Mr. Rogers. It's
but with Sesame Street, they were saying every child deserves to get an education.
Yeah,
regardless of who they are.
Right.
Every child deserves to know that they're loved.
Mm-hmm.
That's why very often they would just have frank conversations about their feelings.
Yeah.
Also not something that people, especially in the 60s and 70s, were doing very well. And they teach you that you can look like a literal monster and there's nothing wrong with you.
Fuck yeah. You can live in a trash can.
So they were fighting racism, xenophobia, homophobia. They were showing what it's like to grow up, maybe not in a neighborhood that feels the safest, but to say like, when you come here, you're safe.
Mm-hmm.
Even if outside is not safe, you're safe here. And Mr. Rogers did that too. And it's cornbally puppets flopping around, but it did something to our culture that I think we still don't appreciate enough.
Damn, that's a good answer. Really good. Love Muppets too.
Oh hell yeah! Who doesn't love a Muppet? I'm basically a Muppet.
I feel like a fucking Muppet. Yeah, that's so funny. I wonder if that's an 80s. I definitely like just relate to the way Muppets kind of look at the world and move around.
They're flopping around. They sometimes get where they need to go.
What's something dark about you?
Something dark about me?
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting because like I recently just noticed like all of my women friends are more often into this. I really like a lot of other people, I'm obsessed with like murderers and stuff.
What's up with that?
I don't know. I have to be careful to be like, am I just enjoying somebody else's misery?
Right.
But also part of me just wants to know like, what are the deepest chasms of humanity?
Right.
What part of it is morality and what part of it is like somebody just not being well? Mm-hmm. And I just want to try. I think I'm just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Because like, I think it.
Do you think that's why everyone's doing it? Like, do you think that's why it's because it is going through this moment of extremely popular? Like,
no, it's very interesting. But I've liked this since I was a child. Like, I used to like find paperbacks about like the Ken and Barbie killers and stuff like that. And I've always like, especially the ones that are like Jonestown or like Jeffrey Dahmer, like these extreme situations.
Yeah.
But it started with one person who was to everybody else, if not normal, at least like you didn't expect that to happen. Like Jim Jones, he started, I think it was in Indiana. He helped desegregate Indiana before the people's church. It was almost all black people because he not not necessarily altruistically.
Right.
I think he kind of like preyed upon the black community in some ways. For a long time, he was actually doing a net good. He like helped. He literally would go in the restaurants and like he would convince the business owners to be like, you want black people's businesses.
Wow.
But
That's so
then
interesting.
he somehow got from there to forcing mothers to poison their own children.
So you think there's like something about this, that expression of this, like this absurd evil that is always rooted in like a human.
Yeah. I just have a really, really like morbid sensibility about myself that I'm not always comfortable with.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I tried it, but also last podcast on the left is super funny. So
I haven't listened to that one. I know that it's very popular. I definitely started to feel weird about it with, I think Serial kind of kicked it off, putting it in the popular eye, like true crime stuff. Which people obviously been. I mean, Silence of the Lambs. People have like loved murder for a long time.
Yeah, that's why I like
violence is all over movies.
I like that one movie, Funny Games, that came out.
I never saw that. I know what you're talking about. I think it disturbed me too much, like the idea.
It is very disturbing. And you're going to be very uncomfortable because I feel this is what I think the director's intention might have been, and I could be wrong. I think he wanted to confront us about our fascination with violence.
Yeah.
And that's why that movie, spoiler alert, don't listen to this part if you want to watch it. At one point, you think that the characters are going to get away and be safe because it's like a house invasion film.
Right.
And the characters literally break the fourth wall and go, do you think it's going to be this kind of movie? They rewind it. And to the point that those people had not escaped. These characters look the audience in the eye and go, no, I know what you came here for.
Yeah.
When a murder happens, they don't make it like exciting. They make you sit in the silence and the reality of it.
Yeah.
And I think we just don't do that amount of consideration to be like, that was an actual person.
Right.
They had an actual life. They had humanity. They had people who loved them.
That I think is the concern I have for, like, I think a lot of like awful film. I think Gaspar Noé's like that, like gets away with these atrocious films that people are like, it's art. It makes us sit with our violence. But I really don't. I think that's like, like it's weird because some Lars von Trier movies like I really like loved because I received like Antichrist this way. I thought it was actually a very like feminist film the way I received it. Like it was this idea of the masculine idea of civilization that colonizes things versus like this feminine like power in the earth, and it was dark and weird. But now it seems like it's just proving that like that might have just been me as an okay person projecting what I saw.
Rationalizing and like, this is how I make it okay.
Yeah, but really like these auteurs and these people who like are fascinated with murder, there is an aspect of just like getting off on this like cruelty.
And I don't know, and I'm not trying to justify it this way, but maybe there's just some part of us as the animal that just gets excited by seeing something really shocking.
I mean, I definitely get
like when
excited.
we like made gladiators fight each other.
Totally. I mean, I've talked about it on here. I'm very into violence. Like I can't deny that it's like in my bones. I'm attracted to violence. I just feel like a thing I say about like UFC and MMA and stuff like that. People who don't watch that normally or aren't attracted to it feel like it's very brutal, but there's a world of difference between two professionals who have turned their bodies into things that our bodies aren't, going at it with like tactics, capability, durability, intention, and a kind of mutual respect versus non-consensual violence on the street in real life, whatever.
I think it's definitely just like we're getting the same sort of like chemical reactions that manifest in different ways, like, know, how you get like that sort of dopamine rush every time you get a like or a notification and stuff like that.
Totally.
This is just like whatever chemical that gets released, it's just causing something that we then build an appetite for.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely need to not like pretend like we don't have dark feelings. Like you definitely need to find a way to healthy ways to express it because otherwise it does pathologize. Anyway, that's good. That's a good little exploration. Okay, what is the last gorgeous thing you saw?
I saw this very, very fine bear, not like the yogi kind, but the gay subculture kind on Instagram. God damn, he was a leather daddy too. I was like, how do I make that my husband?
Oh, that's so funny.
I don't necessarily have like a type of man. I can appreciate all kinds of them.
Yeah.
But that man was gorgeous. That's the only way I can describe him is gorgeous. And he wasn't like in a feminine way. It was like a strong male beauty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to drop their Instagram name? Or is that too weird?
Oh, I just put in hashtag bear.
So that's even better. All right.
It's very objectifying. I'm sorry, sir. I'm sure you're very cool and have a great personality. But damn your pecs. He knows he has good pecs. He's posting them. All right.
That's probably one of the most honest answers I've gotten on here, which is wonderful.
Why did people like the Mona Lisa?
Yeah, I think people are. I like really appreciate that. That's so fucking awesome. You're just like, yeah, hell yeah. People are delicious, you know? The last section of the thing is I call it the don't kill yourself list. I started when I was feeling really bad in my life. And it's, I always start it with coffee, sandwiches, and lavender soap. It's generally things that are accessible and wonderful and like reasons to stay alive. So I want you to add something to the list.
Okay, cool. Taking a train ride up the Pacific Coast.
Oh, really good one.
Ice cream is my favorite food.
What flavor?
There's not an ice cream I won't try. The best ice cream I've ever had was there's a small franchise that we have down here, but it originated in Portland.
McConnell's?
Salt and Straw.
Oh, Salt and Straw is very good.
McConnell's is good too. I go to almost any ice cream place I can get my hands on. And I love like the thrifty, cheap stuff.
Hell yeah.
But this was an olive oil flavor ice cream. And I was like, how can that be good? Yeah. Even though I will try more adventurous flavors, even like this one has mashed potatoes in it.
I've never had that one. That sounds wild.
But olive oil, I'm not sure if they put some vanilla in it, but that's the best way I can describe it. Mm-hmm. It maybe it had to do with like the way it changed like the fat composition.
Yeah.
It was just the most satisfying ice cream I've ever had. I was there for like 3 days because I was in a film that was in a festival there, and then during the 3 days I went to Salt and Straw 4 times.
I get that.
And then after that, sex and petting a cat on the street.
Petting a cat on the street, which is what you were doing.
Yeah, I did that when we met up at your place. I had met a cat and made friends with it. Iced coffee, watching RuPaul's Drag Race.
You've already added.
I can like ramble on because
very good.
I get satisfaction out of small things.
I think that is the way we get through.
Yeah, like what will make my day is if I have to walk past somebody on the street and I go, "Excuse me," and they don't do that thing where they pretend you were a ghost,
right,
and like just don't even react. If they go, "Oh yeah, no problem," I will be on cloud 9. I don't know why. I think just because it happens so infrequently that people are like okay just to acknowledge each other if they don't know each other.
Totally. Yeah. I had that like today leaving the locker room in a weird way. I like was going to get something and I bumped this guy's elbow and just instinctively was like, "Oh, sorry, man." And the way he responded, it was like, "Oh, it's cool." Like it was the weirdest. Yeah. Like I could tell he was relieved that I wasn't being an ass. It was just like nice.
No, and I'm not putting a value judgment if you are the kind of person who doesn't talk because like you're shy. I'm not a shy person, but I am I'm definitely like a grocery line talker.
No, nice.
I'm that guy.
No, that's. I mean, I don't know. Bring it to like some kind of conclusion, maybe. But I appreciate like. You're a person who's willing to connect with people. I mean, that's why you're an artist. And thank you also for doing this because I think this is like all of that's about is like and ignoring like it's, being someone who does that in your work or in your thing. If you don't do that in your like everyday little bump into each other exchanges, I mean,
I think I said earlier on the podcast that I don't like anybody, but that's not true. I think as I allow myself to open up to people, I like them more and more. And it becomes easier to just sit down with somebody I don't know very well and just like, yeah, I'll tell you like my deep, hurty, hard stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks for doing it here.
Of course.
I think we're good.
And thank you for doing this podcast. Dude, it's so important.
Thanks, Reed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel I'm very proud of this. And I'm very grateful that you and anybody who comes on is like, being so fucking open. I think I know I've gotten enough, one's all that matters, but I've gotten enough like messages that it really matters to people. Like,
hell yeah.
Being people. Anyway, thank you for listening. And that's it. We're done. We're good.
Goodbye.
Oh, do you want to say Twitter or something where you can find you?
Oh yeah.
Again, that ding dang dangus or something?
That dang dingus.
That dang dingus.
Yeah. And, yeah, follow me if you want, or go on your own path, man.
Yeah, hell
Who am I
yeah.
to say what you got to do?
All right. Here we go. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all for listening again. And review if you can. That helps us out. If you can, go to patreon.com/mygoodbadbrain. Help us out. Keep this bad boy going. And that's it. I appreciate you. Have a lovely, lovely week. Self-care. Hydrate. You know what I mean? It's rough out there, man. Be well. Lots of love. Good day.